Okay, today is the exciting day. We did the engine start. We had a couple of hiccups, but it was relatively smooth. Took a little bit longer than expected, but we got it done. So I had my wife's family over to watch. We started with, so I cracked the radiator bleed bolt the night before just so I wouldn't forget. Um, this is so that when the engine runs, the air in the coolant system will bleed out and eventually just the coolant will start bleeding out, and then that's when you can tighten it. I had also already disconnected the inertia switch, and I also disconnected the coil packs ahead of time, but I made sure to double check for this session. Then uh, all you do is you turn on the car and you kind of crank until the oil pressure will get up to 3 to 4 bar. Um, when you turn off the engine, it'll go back down, but you know that the oil system has sort of circulated enough through the engine if it reaches that pressure. So that took a few cranks, 3 or 4 cranks. I only cranked for 5, 6 seconds at a time. Once that was set, I connected the coils and connected the inertia switch. And then I also filled up the fuel at this point. Filled up about 5 gallons, and then I tried to fire up the engine. So um, I tried to fire up the engine quite a few times. It wasn't firing. I thought that maybe it was just taking more time for the fuel to get through the system. But turns out the inertia switch actually has a button on the top that may have tripped during shipping. So you have to turn that on. I found that out a little bit later, and this is sort of where the hiccups happen. I kept cranking because I thought the fuel just wasn't reaching the system, and eventually the battery ran out. So I had to get my jumping battery and sort of try to start the system with that. And um, eventually, the fuel got to the engine and it did start up, but the engine would die. Um, and there wasn't enough battery to sort of like keep it up. So my sister-in-law came and held open um, the throttle just a little bit, and I started one more time, and she held it for a good 30 seconds to a minute just to sort of give it a little bit more go. And that's when the engine actually stayed on. Um, and once that happened, I noticed that the coolant that was in the tank had pretty much all gone away, so I had to go and fill that coolant real quick and just keep it topped off as it sort of worked its way through the system and drained more out of the tank. Um, then when I noticed that it was just coolant dripping out of the bleed screw, I tightened that up and then just watched the coolant um, and made sure the level uh, was kept at the right spot. Then after you just let the engine run for quite a bit, it takes maybe 10 minutes or so for the engine to get up to about 100 degrees, and that's when you would check that the radiator fan turns on. So right at about 100, the fan will turn on. It'll cool the engine down to about 97, 98. And my dealer recommended me just check this cycle 4 or 5 times. So I just did that. And then once I knew it was working properly 4 or 5 times, I shut the engine off. Um, the thing you need to pay attention to is if the fan doesn't come on at 100 and it keeps going up, you want to shut the engine off and investigate. You don't want to overheat the whole thing. I think at the end there, I filled a little bit too much coolant, so I may have to, turkey baster some of it out. But my dealer said just run it a few times and see if it goes down after that. That was it. That was an exciting day. It was really cool to see the engine fire up.